In this video, I'm going to show you how I use this low dome wire without using heat to solder it to the frame of my pieces. Before we dive in, it's worth noting that this wire can be pretty difficult to form without scratching the surface, especially if you're not going to anneal it beforehand. This piece here was made without using any heat to anneal the wire or to solder it to the frame, so I'll show you the exact same method that I used for this piece in the one that I'm working on now. This is the frame of the piece that I'll be adding low dome wire to for today's video. If you're interested in seeing my videos on framing, I'll make sure to link those down below. I have here about 8 inches of low dome wire. You can see that it's fairly thin, flat on the back, and domed slightly over the top of the wire. This adds a really cool texture to a finished piece. I'm likely to only use about 2 to 2.5 inches of this wire in the actual piece, but buying it in a longer length gives me a little bit more leverage when I'm going to forming, especially if I'm not annealing this wire first. I'm going to follow this same pattern of coming from the back, around over the bail, and off over to the left side for this next piece. I went ahead and rounded off one side of the wire. I just want to make sure that I don't have any sharp points in my piece once it's finished. If you don't have access to files, this step isn't entirely necessary. You'll just need to make sure that you tuck the sharp ending of the wire into the piece so it doesn't create a snag that will actually catch on the wearer. First, I'm going to go ahead and form the bail of the piece, holding at the rounded end that will be at the back. I'm going to fold over to whatever thickness I need the piece to be. In this case, since my stone is quite thick, that's probably about what I'm looking for. From here I can begin to form it to whatever shape I need it to fit into the piece. I'm going to take my nylon tips, very gently curve the wire off to the left. I do find that it's often a lot easier for me to form this wire with my hands instead of the tools. As I'm working, I just want to continue to check back and make sure that it fits along the line that I have in my head for the piece. Coming up, over the top, and off to the left side. Once I've reached the right amount of curve, I can go ahead and twist where it'll come around to the back of the piece. From here I can adjust it as needed. Once I have it adjusted to the shape that I need, I can go ahead and trim all of the excess off of the end. You can see here that I'll be attaching it to the back of the bail, just so, and about to the left side of the frame, just above where my thumb is. I'm going to go ahead and mark it just so I know how long to cut it, with a little bit of extra, just in case. Here we can see what our little piece looks like. Now before I go ahead and start the process of creating the holes that will attach this to the frame, I am going to go ahead and file down this sharp edge that I've created with my cutters. Once I've gone ahead and filed and sanded that, it's ready to move on to the next step. I'm going to use this center punch to go ahead and mark the spot to drill a hole through the metal to anchor it to the frame. You can make one of these fairly simply using a nail, or even a thumbtack would work. I'm going to go ahead and mark 2 places where I'm going to drill through the metal to create the anchor points to connect it to my frame. Using my center punch on the flat side of the low dome wire, I'm going to push straight down to create a divot in the metal. That'll give a place for the drill bit to sit in without jumping around all over the surface of our piece. I'm going to go ahead and mark the other side as well. Now it's ready to go. I'm using a 1.2 millimeter drill bit set into the handle of my flex shaft. If you don't have a flex shaft, this can also be done using a Dremel or even with a regular hand drill. Just be careful to apply as little pressure as possible and let the tip of the tool do the work instead of trying to force it through the metal. That can cause the drill bit to break. I've also set this piece of scrap wood on the surface I'll be working on. That way I can drill straight through the metal and into the wood without worrying about damaging my working surface. This will also help me prevent from breaking the tip of my tool. To drill the holes, I'm going to place them in that little divot we created with our center punch. You can see that the divot's pretty small. It doesn't take much, just enough for the tip of the drill bit to sit in without sliding around over the surface of the metal. To drill the holes, I'm going to firmly hold my metal in place with my left hand, with the surface that I'm going to be drilling into flat on my piece of wood. I'm going to place the drill bit into the divot and apply slow speed and even pressure. Now to repeat the same process on the other side. We now have 2 holes that we can feed wire through to anchor this piece onto the frame of our pendant. To anchor our low dome to the frame, I went ahead and pulled these 2 lengths of 18 gauge half round out of my scrap pile. They're approximately 2 to 3 inches long. I'm going to start by connecting the top of the bail to the piece, just feeding my 18 gauge straight through. And connecting it onto the frame from there. Once we have the top connected, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process on the bottom, feeding my 18 gauge through and connecting it to the frame on both sides. And there we have our low dome element connected to the frame and ready for us to continue to build the piece from there. For those of you who are wondering, I will make sure that I go ahead and connect the link in the description below to purchase low dome wire. If you liked this video or found it helpful, go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more content similar in the future. As always, a huge thank you goes out to those who are already supporting the channel through Patreon. The names that you see on the screen now make it possible for me to be able to continue to make these videos. If you're interested in helping support the channel, check out the link to my Patreon in the description of this video.